train volunteers to help the people who are in need. So they are very caring, very compassionate, and very passionate about their work. How they help the needy persons. So they make difference in people's life. So we are very blessed and very feel uh, great that Stephen and Melissa is with us today to deliver their thoughts to help our students to learn more how they can cope with these current situations and be positive in their life. So if you have any questions at the end of their talk, you can ask any questions. So Melissa and Stephen, you are very welcome to this assembly, and we appreciate your help. And now I will request Dr. Neeta Chopra to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishwarveer ji. Vaheguru ji ka khalsa, Vaheguru ji ki fateh. Pyari Saad Sangat ji. Today we have Melissa Tucker and Stephen with us from Crisis Connections, and Crisis Connections is a huge not-for-profit support program in the community for kids and for adults. I'm very happy that today we have parents also. Te bache bhi aaye hai. And this is a great program that they have tailored to our community. ਤੇ ਸਾਡੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਲਈ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲੀ ਇਹ ਤਿਆਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਣਗੇ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਯੂਥ ਹੈ, ਸਾਡੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈ, what kind of problems are they facing today, stress ਤੇ anxiety ਨਾਲ ਕਿਹੜੇ issues ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਏ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਸਾਰੇ ਹੀ ਅਫੈਕਟ ਹੋਏ ਹੈ ਪੈਂਡੈਮਿਕ ਨਾਲ, and we are all undergoing stress. I think it is going to be a great talk. ਤੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਸੁਣਨ ਤੇ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ ਵੀ ਸੁਣਨ, ਮੈਂ ਰਿਕੁਐਸਟ ਕਰਾਂਗੀ। ਐਂਡ ਦੂਜੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਰਿਕਾਰਡ ਵੀ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਇਹਨੂੰ। ਤੇ ਈਸ਼ਵਰਵੀਰ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਕਾਫੀ ਦੇਰ ਤੋਂ ਪਲਾਨ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ, ਔਰ we are thankful ਕਿ Crisis Connections has given us this opportunity and they have come to our community and they are going to specially tailor these talks to us. This will be the first of a few of talks that they will give. Please feel free to ask questions. They are here for us and they are here to support us. So with that, I will invite Stephen. You can please go ahead and start.
Yeah, welcome, Stephen and Melissa. Thank you. Thank you, Anitaji.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here and having Melissa and I. In the training department, we do a lot of different trainings, and like Mr. Singh and Dr. Chopra talked about, we work with children, we work with adults, and we hold the balance too. So we kind of do things a little differently, and that we still honor that positivity in our thoughts, and our intentions can help us cope with the things that we're going through. And then here at Crisis Connections, when we work on the crisis line and on Teen Link, we use an analogy, almost like calling it a bowl. So when we talk with people, we help to hold a bowl for them, so that when they're feeling anxious, when they're feeling overwhelmed, when they're really stressed out with the things that they do, we help to hold the bowl. So when they talk with us, they talk about the things that are stressing them out, the things that are causing them anxiety, and we help them figure out what those things are, what might bring those things up. Is it schoolwork? Is it, maybe there's struggles with friendships, and maybe you feel like a friend is ignoring you. We're in the pandemic, so there is a loss of coping skills where we're not able to go out and see people. So it's really great that I can see some faces on the screen here, and that helps too. So I get to see your smiles, I get to see your faces, I get to know you a little bit, you get to know Melissa and I, and we're really here to, again, like Dr. Chopra talked about, is how we can support you, as well as like a collaborative working together so that we can help support each other in a community effort. Melissa, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, thank you. So I did want to say thanks to Dr. Chopra and Mr. Singh for inviting us to come. And we are excited to start a project together. And so today we were going to talk about of different things, and we're gonna sort of start off slow with some foundational ideas, and then we can build on that as time goes on. So we received some questions that came from some of the youth group. And so we hope to get to some of those questions. And then we have some handouts, 2 handouts that Mr. Singh or Dr. Chopra will send out to everyone, and we'll look at them today a little bit. And so that way we can have some really useful tools to use in our day-to-day, which, as Mr. Singh and Dr. Chopra talked about, within your spiritual practice, you already have some of those tools. And then additionally, we can talk about what are some other useful things that can help support us when we are feeling really stressed out or we're trying to manage day by day, especially now. Did you want to start with any polling, Stephen? Are we co-hosts or hosts now? Can we run a poll? Oh wait, sorry, never mind. That would have been on our link. Got it. Okay, moving on.
We can do that next time.
Yeah. I just realized that you have to have that link, the original.
We can send them. You can send them to Mr. Singh next time, and he can add them.
Yeah.
We can play with that.
Yeah, we'll use that as a tool next time. Okay. Should I just jump in, Stephen? Or
yeah.
Okay, great. So today, what I wanted to put out there as an idea, okay, is the concept of the things that Stephen and I are talking about are ideas that maybe you want to experiment with, okay? So I have a love of science, okay? And the way that I look at the world is when I learn something new or when I want to try something new, I kind of run an experiment on myself. So I'm not saying that any of these things are mandatory for anybody or the only way to do something, but that through Stephen's and my training and experience, that we're making these suggestions as ideas to try for yourself, okay? So I wanted to start kind of with that because I didn't want anyone to feel like we were telling them what to do, but that we're just making some helpful suggestions when when the things that we usually do aren't working the way that they used to, then sometimes we have to try something new in order to get back to feeling good about what we've been doing, okay, or where we're at. So I wanted to introduce myself a little bit as far as my training. So I'm a relatively new to Washington, and I started at Crisis Connections in August. And before that, I was working at a parenting agency where I used to live in Hawaii. And before the parenting agency, I also worked at a substance abuse treatment center where I worked with families and I had youth groups. And so I really have a love for families and parenting skills, and getting to me, the foundation of a happy society comes from a happy family, right? And from a happy family comes happy individuals. So I like to support everyone to try to find that peace inside of themselves so that we can avoid inner conflict, familial conflict, and then, cultural conflict or societal conflict, right? So that's kind of my personal philosophy. So I'm always looking for ways to find that peaceful path, okay, to follow. So it's very hard to have conflict with others without conflict in ourselves, right? If we have peace within ourselves, it's very hard to get us to fight with you, okay? So when we notice that we maybe are having conflict in our family, we can look inside of ourselves to see where is that root of conflict coming from as well, okay? Because I know in families, everybody already knows that we love one another, right? So if we know that we love one another, then when when they're upset, right, we can be curious about, wonder why they got upset. because it doesn't necessarily make us mad. But if we also have some inner conflict going on or something that isn't feeling good, when somebody gets upset with us, then we go back, we strike back at them or we strike back at ourselves, right? So we just like to kind of talk about that a little bit. Now, there's lots of things in life that can certainly lead us to have that inner conflict, right? Could be financial troubles, could be troubles with our extended family or within our family. It can be things at school or at work. So I'm not saying, oh, it's our fault that we're stressed out or it's our fault that we're not happy, because that isn't going to be very useful, is it? Like if we're blaming ourselves, that's going to be just as bad as blaming somebody else for us feeling stressed out, okay? So again, when we're looking to understand why we feel conflicted or unhappy, we want to maybe approach it with that same curious mindset, that scientific mindset. Let's collect some data. Let's understand ourselves. Let's reflect and meditate on where our discomfort is coming from, what source of it is bringing us to feel that stress. Now, a lot of us, myself included, have felt very stressed out during the pandemic. It's been nice to be with my family a lot. And at the same time, my life has really changed from before. So naturally, when we have big changes like that, especially ones that are out of our control, then we have to try to get really creative on how we can adjust what we do so that we can adjust what we think. Because we don't have control over the world. We don't have control over our cities, our states. We don't even have control over our schools or anything like that, right? The thing that we can change the easiest is our belief system and the way we look at things and how we ask for help and support in doing that. So I like to throw that in as a really big key part, because it's not only our responsibility to give us the support that we need. Sometimes the solution is not what you will create, but what somebody else will help you create that will work for yourself. Does that make sense? Right? Because we only have the ideas that we ourselves have in our own minds. We're limited by what our own mind can do. So I see a lot of young faces out there, which is really exciting. And I want to say, hey, sometimes we can't think of the solution to the problem. I'm sure you've all had that happen before, right? Where you had a problem and you weren't sure how to solve it, and you were trying to solve it yourself. But then what actually ended up helping was that you asked somebody for their ideas, or you saw the way somebody else did it, and then all of a sudden it made sense and was easier for you, right? So that's one reason I think why Stephen and I feel passionate about Crisis Connections, is because we are there as a place for people who may not know who to ask about how to think of things in a different way, right? So when people call us in crisis, they're struggling with coming up with a solution to what's going on for them or how to think or feel about it, right? So that is always a resource that's anonymous and available for families to use, okay? At the same time, Stephen at the end is also going to give some other ideas about places where we can reach out for support. Okay, so that's the basis of which I wanted to start, okay, so that everybody knows where I'm coming from and knows why I'm approaching it as I might use the words experiment or things like that, okay? Because I'm kind of looking at it from the science of being a human being, right? That's what we're all here doing, is trying to figure out how to be humans, how to be good humans, how to build good character, right? And how to build good families within our lives. Okay, so there's a lot of things that happen within a family that are interesting to think about. Okay, so I'm speaking a lot today to the parents, but also I want the kids to know this information too, because as we go on and we have more meetings, then it will be interesting, okay? So for me, with the parents, you know, being the adults and the head of the house, right? A lot of responsibility rests on them to create a household that is functioning well and feeling good, okay? It's a huge burden and a huge responsibility, right? That's why it's important to think about starting a family and making sure we're in a good place to do it, yeah? But that being said, once we have a family going, there's some really great opportunities for us to grow and mature and to evolve ourselves, right? Into being better people and better parents, yes? Mr. Singh, has this been your experience from being in a family and from working with children, that it helps you grow a lot as an adult?
Absolutely. You said it pretty right. So I think as a Sikh means a learner. So I think we learn throughout our life. Whatever we learn for good, it helps a lot. So sometimes you learn from little kids, they say,
Get my pencil.
and it sometimes makes you to think, and change your life for better. So as you said, I totally agree with you when you said happy individuals is a happy family, and when a happy family is a happy society, and happy society makes a whole nation a good nation, a good society, a very good world. So in our 10th master, Guru Gobind Singh Ji says, Mans ki jaat sabe ek pehchan wo, recognize the whole human race as one. When we take that concept into our practical life, then small differences, this and that, they all goes away, and you live with peace within yourself, and that helps a lot. As you said, if you are peaceful within yourself, and then it is very rare that you will have a conflict with other people's. So that's a great idea you are sharing today. So I won't take much of the time. Please go ahead and share more with very valuable thoughts. Thank you.
Yes, good. Thank you. It's nice to have confirmation that we're on the same page.
Yes.
Good. So we have, only a short time today, and I have lots of ideas that we can share. But let's start first a little bit. I'm going to just share not very many slides, okay? But I wanted to, again, sort of lay down the foundation of what we'd like to talk about. So I think something that's really important inside of a family, and especially the parents, okay? I like to say that because, to me, the parents always show the children and show the family how to behave. You can say the words of how to behave, but really, the children are going to follow the actions, the behaviors, okay? So we want to role model and show a good way of being, a good human being, right? And a good family member. So the steps that I like to think about are first hearing and creating a place to hear everyone's ideas or opinions, whether that's a family meeting or whether it just happens when you're folding laundry or cooking food. It doesn't matter, right? Providing a place to hear what others, everyone in your family thinks. Now, does it mean that we always agree? No. Does it mean that we sometimes have different ways of looking at the world or different things like that? Yes, okay. But when we get to the basics, when we hear what someone's values are or what their experience is, and we try to listen, like Stephen was talking about, we just hold a bowl for them to put their story in. It's not necessarily our story or our way of looking at it, and we don't have to do anything about that necessarily, but we hold that in the bowl. That's the hearing part, okay? And listening deeply to what they say maybe asking questions, being curious, that listening part is going to then lead to the next part, which is understanding. Okay? So again, when we do these things for ourselves, when we meditate on our own thoughts and feelings and experiences, and we try to listen to ourselves so that we can have some understanding, we're going to do the same thing with others, right? So that what goes well for ourselves goes well for working with others. Okay? Without understanding, it's very hard within a family to get to the point where there can be good communication and where everybody feels safe and supported. So that's, to me, where we want to start, very basic. Is I would like to invite all the participants today, all the family members today, to take some time or create some space for that hearing and listening, and use some reflection of your own experience and what you heard to move towards that understanding part. Okay? So that's the first step that we want to talk about. And this is another thing, another slide. So I prefer to focus on what we do rather than what we don't do. But I'm going to add a little bit about what we don't do, even though that's not where my focus is necessarily, okay? So especially as parents, when we're listening to our children, what we want to maybe avoid is dismissing what they say. You shouldn't think that way, you shouldn't feel that way, things like that, right? Because then again, that's not creating a space where they feel safe sharing what they think and feel, okay? We don't necessarily want to ignore what are their underlying feelings, right? We want to follow them and support children while we're listening to them, okay? We don't want to always try to use logic and explain to them why what they think is wrong, okay? Parents obviously have more life experience, more education than children, that's for sure. However, I'm not sure if you've ever had really strong feelings, but if somebody tries to use logic to explain why you shouldn't think that way, I'm pretty sure that it didn't change how you felt, right? So that's really important for parents to recognize when they have that desire to kind of fix what the children are going through or fix the situation. I'd like to give the perspective of framing it to yourself instead, to think about how can I support my children to figure out how to fix it themselves, okay? So that's the difference between a child explains something that's going on for them and you give them the answer, versus a child explains something about what they're going through and then you talk through it to support them to come up with the answer themselves. Now, there may be a point where you maybe give your own suggestion, but if we don't want to lead with that, right? We want, because when children leave the house, we want them to be able to figure it out on their own. We don't want them to be dependent on us to always have the answer, okay? So what instead, as a parent, our job is to teach children how to solve their own problems, okay? So this is why, even as a counselor, a therapist, I didn't tell my clients what to do. I can't know everything that's going on in their life. Even if we spent months and months and months where they told me everything that was going on, it didn't matter. I still couldn't necessarily come up with a solution for them because they know their own life better, okay? Obviously, you all know your children better than I know your children. At the same time, you still can't know everything about your children. So we first want to listen to what others are thinking and feeling, and then we want to support them to solve it themselves. I'm going to say, parents, children are really smart and resilient when we create that space for them, okay? They say the darndest things. They say the smartest thing sometimes, and we're like, wow, that was so mature. Are they like that all the time? No. Sometimes they're going to have a temper tantrum or something like that, right? That's very normal, okay? However, after children are basically done being babies and toddlers, right, then their developmental needs change, okay? Now all of a sudden, they rely on you a little bit less. When they're babies, you have to give them everything. And it can be hard as a parent to realize I have to turn off that part of me that wants to give everything as I would to a baby. And then as children get older and older, as they're teenagers, of course, their needs change as well, right? Developmentally, it's very interesting. I love developmental psychology. So that's the idea of what are the needs of humans from when they're babies until they're elders, right? And it's very fascinating to see like the different stages that we all go through and the different changes we need. And there's a way to look at parenting from that perspective. When you have a baby versus when you have a teenager, what is it that you provide to them? And what is it that you encourage them to learn on their own? So one thing I would like to say to parents is this, okay, and children, which is any values that you wish for your children to follow, you need two things, okay? They will see what you do. So again, they will follow the values that you show them. You almost never have to use a word, right? So I lived in Hawaii for a long time. And in the traditional Hawaiian culture, it's very uncommon to explain things when you're teaching them. It's very uncommon to tell somebody what to do. If you want to go and learn with the kumu, with the teacher, you're very quiet as a student. You don't ask any questions. They don't tell you anything. What you do is you watch them and you observe what they're doing, and then you come to an understanding and you copy them. Now, sometimes they will maybe tell you something, but they won't tell you because you asked. They'll tell you because you're ready to know, okay? So it's a little bit, I see that with parenting, right? Of course, we always tell our children, don't do this, right? Again, we want to model that. And if you've said it more than once, if you've said it more than 10 times, then they already know, right? I could probably ask the kids today to tell me what are all the values of their parents. And I've done this exercise before a lot with families where I have the kids choose the values from a stack of like cards of examples. What are the values in your family? And they can be very young, 5, 6, 7 years old, and they can explain to me what the values already are. Okay, so what does that mean? That means nagging children about values doesn't change much. Okay, we sound like a broken record, right? So next time I would love to talk about some techniques that we can use instead of nagging, instead of repeating ourselves, instead of feeling frustrated, that will support that, okay? The handouts we're gonna send, one of them though is the first step, okay? Which is, it's called roadblocks to listening. I'll show you it here, okay? So there are some roadblocks that we can throw up that prevent us from being able to listen to others, okay? And these go for ourselves as well, okay? So ordering people, warning them or threatening them, preaching to them, that's that nagging thing, advising, whatever. So I would love, we'll email these out, and I would love for people to look at them. It's just one page, front and back, okay? And look at and notice, right? That's that experiment thing, right? Collect some data around what do I do? What are the roadblocks that I am using that prevent me from being able to listen or to hear what someone in my family is saying? Okay, so there's a lot of words here. You don't need to read them now, but we'll send them out and so you can look at them, okay? And then the other handout that we're gonna send is a little bit more about some stress management stuff, because I know that's really important. I'm not going to go through the slides today of the questions that the students sent, but I will say this. They're almost all about stress management, okay? So all of our students, and I'm sure Mr. Singh can say that because he sees them every day, is all of our students are experiencing a lot of stress right now and are looking for ways to solve how to manage stress, okay? So we know that that's a really important one. And I think the first start is that hearing, creating a space to hear one another, listening, creating that space to listen to each other, and creating that ability to understand one another by not blocking communication, right? So that's the handout. When we look at what can we stop doing first so that communication can happen, then the next time we meet, we'll talk about then once we are communicating, if we're not doing certain things, then what are we going to do? So I can remember one time I was doing intense family counseling with this family, and I showed the guardian the handout of the roadblocks, and she read it and she looked at it and she said, Melissa, this is the only thing I do. This is everything that I do. This is my parenting techniques. And I said, I know, it's very common, right? So that means you're human, which is fine, okay? It's, we recognize the reason why psychologists can make a list of what are roadblocks is because they're common. They're a human thing that happens. So we don't have to get mad at ourselves that we're doing it, right? It's just a common thing. Okay, and then she said, well, now what do I do then? Right? What's the next step? So what we're going to ask today is that all of you think about how to communicate, how to listen, and just try to do it naturally on your own. See what is your own way of listening, okay? Look at the roadblocks and try to maybe refrain or stop or diminish doing those, and then look at just the listening part, okay? And maybe just saying to one another, I hear you, I hear what you said, or maybe one technique we could throw out there as a beginning is maybe you just let them know what you heard by saying how you think they feel. And you can always ask them, is that right? Am I getting it right? Because maybe we're starting at a place where we're not very good at that yet, right? Understanding, okay? So maybe we want to check with those who we're listening to. That's a good way to experiment also. Let me see. Can I ask you, is this what you're feeling? Right? And then they can say yes or no. So the other handout we wanted to send to everyone, especially for the kids and teenagers. I see a lot of youngers here, and I'm not sure they're quite ready for this. But for teenagers, we have this handout also that we got online. That's different kinds of applications, okay? So the phone or the computer can be an interesting tool to use that maybe you hadn't thought of before about how to manage stress. And with us not being able to go out as much in the world as we probably would like, this is one little tool that we wanted to offer that will help. So we'll send this out as well. So it has 7 different ones that people can try, and parents can try it too. You could even do it together, right? Especially if you have a younger kid, maybe the 2 of you or the 3 of you or the 4 of you would do it together, and then you could learn something about each other through the process of doing that. So Stephen, would you like to bring up some other resources that we were talking about?
Yeah, some of the other resources that we have, which we tend to notice in terms of Eastern and Western philosophies around like counseling. So we do have another list that we created that we can make into another PDF that we can send out to the parents. And then we can also, Melissa and I can talk with the parents on what that process might look like or what concerns might be in terms of, again, like Melissa said with talking with the children, is we're not here to force you to say yes to go to counseling or that you need to do it. It's just a way for us to, again, work as a community to say, you know, what's going on and how can this be helpful or maybe not. And also as a way to look at what resources might be more you know, culturally beneficial versus there are a lot of mental health professionals who are white, and there are also mental health professionals who are Asian and Punjabi and people from Hawaii and people of color. And it can be really scary to think about it because there might be stigma associated. So when we talk about feelings, there's even stigma with that, right? So if you break that down into like men and women, boys and girls, sometimes there are a lot of conditions, whether we're seeing them on social media or we're hearing them from other people, like our friends, our family, our coworkers, our peers, and that can make it a barrier for us to reach out for help if we hear other people say, don't do that, you don't need that. Again, listen to that language. They're telling you what to not do versus it sounds like you're stressed. It sounds like you're overwhelmed. Maybe it might be helpful to talk to someone, a professional, about these things, or maybe call the crisis line. We have the crisis line for adults and we have Teen Link for teens. So if teens are stressed, Teen Link is a peer line, so it's for teens by teens. They get a lot of training around mental health and stress and anxiety so that when a teen calls, they're supported by a teen, but the teen is also trained in how to provide support and how to do that listening and understanding. Wow, it sounds like you're really overwhelmed. It makes sense that you're feeling that way because you're stressed with the pandemic and you have schoolwork and you're not being able to see your friends and you're stuck inside most of the times. So when we think about our ability as adults, we have a little bit more freedoms to go out for a drive. Children and teens can't. So again, we have to look at that framework too. Is one of the things that we heard is that, you know, teens and children feel trapped and isolated because they can't just go out for a walk or call and meet up a friend. They're kind of stuck inside. And like I said earlier, for me, I think it's really great to see all these faces who are on the Zoom right now. And it's okay too if you're not comfortable and you want to keep your video off. That is your choice. And then as we get to go on, hopefully Melissa and I will get to see more of your faces, because a part of that positivity is being able to get to see people. If I just looked at all, you know, of these boxes blacked out with just names, I would feel isolated because then I'd feel like I'm just talking to myself. But now I get to see people. I get to see Mr. Singh, Melissa. I'm going to probably say these names wrong, so I apologize. Ekamveer, Harleen, Mahardeep, Gurleen, Anhad, Nibal, Dinaz, Gurneet, Jasmeet. Oh, everyone's turning on their cameras.
Hey, Stephen, could I say something?
Yes.
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to share is that Stephen brought up counseling. And again, I would never tell anybody what to do, and I would never tell anybody they had to go to counseling. Here's what I'd like to say. This is what some people don't realize, is that, yes, there are some mental health diseases, right, that definitely do better when they're helped by a psychiatrist who can give them medication, or a psychologist who's trained in diagnosing this. And when I went to school, I personally decided to become a counselor, right, or a therapist versus a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Because for me, who I really wanted to talk to was average people, right? So that's usually who comes to counseling. Is not necessarily people who have a mental health illness, right? Sometimes they do, But a lot of times people who are just going through something that's really challenging, maybe it's a different stage of change or some kind of loss, or they just feel confused or stuck or trapped, like Stephen was saying. And again, counseling is just one of those ways that you can just have somebody else on your team, right? And it's not necessarily about diagnosing you. Counselors definitely cannot give you medication. But they could recommend if they thought that that would be a potential option, right? Because some people might need it, right? We wouldn't necessarily want to decide that though before we really got to know somebody, right? So, but counseling is for folks who are just like all of the faces I see here today, right? All of anyone, it's just an available resource. And the parting words that I wanted to leave everyone on is, like any human being, what we want is we want to be heard first, right? We like to be heard. Every human being likes to be heard. So we want to listen to children first, right? And then we can move on to the second phase after. Okay, so when we want to talk to somebody, we want to make sure that we hear and listen to them first, right? Once we have been heard, then it's easier for us to listen, right? So we hear what other people say first, and then we get our chance to talk. Or sometimes we need to go first, and then we'll be more able to receive and listen to what people have to say. Okay, so if your children seem like, hey, we're always getting in a conflict about something, maybe say, okay, I will listen first because my child needs to be heard. Then they can listen to what I have to say. But if I talk first, they're not in a listening state yet. They need to be heard first. We want to make sure that we respect everyone's time. Stephen and I can go on for hours about this. We love this topic, so.
Teacher? Excuse me, I got a question.
Oh, we have a question. Mr. Singh, do we have time for questions?
Sure, go ahead, yeah.
Okay, let's hear the question.
I love coloring a lot.
Hey, coloring is very relaxing, isn't it?
I also have a question. Can we go to our classes now? I also have a question.
Okay, Gurleen, tell us your question.
So, like, when you said, like, we block others, like, when we talk to them, what do you mean by, like, blocking others?
Sure. That's a great question. I hope that you look at the handout, but I can give you some examples right away, okay? So let's say we're listening to somebody tell us what's going on with them, and then they say, hey, I'm really sad. I'll give an example. I'm really sad because my dog just died, and I just really feel bad and I really miss him, right? And then if I was listening to that story and then right away I said, oh, Gurleen, your dog died. Well, let me tell you, the best thing to do is to get another dog, right? That's a roadblock to communication, because now the person who misses the dog just feels like, okay, I don't want another dog right now. I'm not ready for another dog. They have all kinds of reasons. I can't even get another dog or something. But the person who was listening wasn't really listening because they were coming up with a solution. So that's what that handout is about, some different examples, right? Or what about if you tell your parents, I don't really feel motivated to do my schoolwork. And then they say, what are you talking about? Schoolwork is the most important thing. Education is the most important thing. You need to get into the bedroom right now, do your homework, or else. Does that make you feel motivated or excited about doing homework? No, it makes us feel like, oh, they didn't listen to what I was saying, right? They weren't listening to why I don't feel motivated. They didn't ask me what's going on. All they did was lecture to me.
It's class over.
And then I got in trouble.
I have a question.
Does that help you answer that, Gurleen, before we move to another question? Does that help?
Thank you.
So there's like 12 of those, okay? And we can go over them next time. They're very good to learn. Yeah. Okay, what's the other question?
Class done.
Mr. Singh, is class done?
Let me ask any students, if you have any other questions, you have last opportunity to ask the question, or we're going to wrap it up. If you don't have any questions,
I have a question.
go ahead.
Is listening good?
I would like to hear your thoughts on that. Do you think listening is good?
Yes. Yeah.
How does it feel when someone listens to you really well?
Yes. It feels good when someone listens to us when we're trying to explain something.
Does it feel like they care about us?
Yeah.
And let me tell you guys, when you're a grown-up, it can be really hard to listen, right? Because maybe listening makes you feel worried, right? When you hear how hard things are for your kids, you get worried because you want things to be easy for your kids, right? So sometimes parents do have a hard time listening. They do, because they get worried right away, you know? Yeah, I see lots of thumbs there. Yeah, it can definitely happen. So, you know, sometimes we have to be patient with our parents. We have to make sure that they know to listen to us.
I have a question.
Okay.
So, sometimes does listening make you worry?
Yeah, right?
So, like, you heard something scary and you don't want to happen it with your family, so that could be that can make you worry, right?
Yes. Yes, it can. And that can make it very hard to listen, right? If your feelings about being worried are so big, maybe it's your turn to talk because, you know, they're so overwhelming. Yeah. But it's really interesting to study the art of listening, right? And the art of communication. It's very, like I say, I want to encourage all of you to do some experimenting, right? To try different things and to learn different ways to listen and to speak, to communicate. Amber, is this you? Gonna ask one question. You're gonna show us your drawing that you made during the teaching. That's great. So drawing is the one way that makes you happy? Awesome.
I also have another question.
Okay.
So I read this book in my other class. It was called, I don't know what it's called, but it was this boy and he had a worry, but he didn't know what the worry was, and it kept on getting bigger every single day.
Yeah, if we don't share it, it can grow and grow and grow, right? Until it's like bigger than us, very heavy to carry.
Mhm.
Yeah, is that what was happening in the book?
Yeah.
How did he get over it? How did he get rid of that worry, or what did he do?
I don't really remember that part.
I remember. I think I know what book you're talking about. And he shared it. He shared what he was worried about, so somebody else could help him carry the burden. And it got smaller and smaller and smaller as he talked about it.
I guess that's what happened, but I don't really remember.
Go find the book and read it again.
Okay. The book was called Ruby Finds a Worry.
Yeah, I think I have it in my house.
And also, sometimes reading something and enjoying something. When you're enjoying something and reading something, you can draw too. Like if you're watching a book, so you can also draw and relax while you're listening to the story, right?
That sounds like a really good example of a coping skill or stress reducing skill, right? So like if you finished your homework or if you completed your chores at home and then you needed to unwind or relax after school or something, yeah, you could listen to a book and do some drawing.
So where are we gonna get these handouts?
So we will email to all the parents through email system.
Teacher,
I sent them already, yes.
teacher, does it always have to be drawing that makes you relaxed, or can it be something else?
Doesn't only have to be drawing. Different people find different ways to relax. I know Stephen and I both like to exercise. I love to do some stretching. It's really nice for me to go on walks and go outside. I do also like drawing, but I have other things I like to do. I like sewing and cooking. So every person is going to be a little bit different about what helps them relax.
I like reading.
Reading is also one of my favorite things.
Glitter also makes us relax.
It can. But for some people who find reading difficult or challenging, it probably would cause them stress and it wouldn't relax them. This is why it's hard to tell people what to do to relax. They have to figure it out themselves.
Hi, Melissa. I'm a parent and I have a question.
Please.
So my question is like sometime kids are like so frustrated or upset. We know this is the problem and they are very good at explaining the problem. So we listen them carefully. But the problem comes when we are not in the position to solve that problem. Also, they are not even ready to listen. Okay, this is a solution, but I don't want to listen. So what we can do in this situation?
Could you give me a little bit more of an example of what you're talking about?
Yeah, which is like sometime out of your control, like sometime like it's play dates or gatherings and they take their stuff out and we can't even say to other kids also because they are also right. Maybe because we have to share the stuff but that stuff is very close to them that they are not ready to share. But we can't say to others also that you can't take the stuff. But so we are unable to handle this situation. So what we can do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's a really good start, in my opinion, is when children are struggling with emotions, that we can start using sentences to describe what they're going through when they're not able to do it themselves. So for example, when something is out of their control, we can say something like, oh, it's so frustrating when things are out of your control, right? And then that way they maybe didn't have that language. We're teaching them some emotion words. I often print out, a lot of emotion words so that then people can develop their vocabulary. But you can say, oh, it's really frustrating. If I had a magic wand, then I would change everything and you would get to go on your play date. But since we don't have a magic wand, what are we going to do? Right? And if we allow the child to solve their disappointment, if we allow the child to solve their frustration, that's how we do that process, by helping them name it and describe it. And then that way they can say, well, yeah, I guess I'm going to go do this other thing then instead. And you're like, okay.
Thank you.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think I can try.
Yes, I know. It can experiment with it, right?
Yeah.
Experiment and try it out and see what happens. If you just the way that I do it is I try to do it from I try to imagine, what are they going through? If this happened to me, if I was going to meet up with my friend and then it got canceled and I couldn't do anything about it, how would I feel, right? And then try to ask them if that's how they feel, in a way, or to just say it as a sentence. It's super frustrating. Ugh, I get so annoyed.
Thank you.
Okay, but we'll go over more of those techniques next time. This time I was just trying to talk a little bit about the listening part, creating the space, doing some experimenting, and looking at what we're currently doing that's blocking the understanding. It's blocking communication. So that's our first step. Our next step, we'll try some techniques and tools to experiment with.
ਈਸ਼ਰਵੀਰ ਜੀ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਮਿਊਟ ਤੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੋ।
Oh yeah, no, thank you. So I think this was a very great session. I appreciate your time, Melissa and Stephen. You give very valuable thoughts to the kids, and if the kids take it into their thinking, it will definitely change their behavior for better. As you particularly mentioned about the hearing, listening, understanding, that is a very, very important part. I can relate to the Gurbani hymns. When we do Japji Sahib part every day, there are 4 bodies of Suni and 4 bodies of Maniye. So that means there is also hymn Gaviye, Suniye, Man Rakhiye Pao. So we sing and we listen, and with heart, with respect and love in our heart. When we do that, we have a better understanding of any concept we are talking about. So that helps a lot in our life, in our shaping our behavior, how we react with other people's. So those are very thoughtful things you share with the kids today, and they also relate with the Gurbani and in the Sikh religion, and it will help definitely our students in learning and put into their behavior to become a better person in their family and for the society also. So really, again, I appreciate that. And anything, Anita, you need to say, please go ahead. Anita ji?
Hanji Veer ji, again, I just want to thank Melissa and Stephen. I think it was a great first session. I think this is wonderful for the kids to just get a sort of little baseline about listening. And I think that kids asked great questions. I'm so proud of all of you. They asked wonderful questions and they are actually grasping it and they are adding to it. So I think that we should keep it up and the children should keep asking questions. Beta, तुसी बड़े अच्छे questions पूछे हैं. Gurleen, I think. मैं देख रही थी नाम जेडे बच्चे क्वेश्चंस पूछ रहे सी. गुरलीन ने बहुत ਵਧੀਆ क्वेश्चन पूछा. एक दूजी बच्ची है जिन्हें क्वेश्चन किया कि रीडिंग मेक्स मी रिलैक्स्ड, ਤੇ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਅੱਛੇ ਲੱਗੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ. ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਬੇਟੇ ਆਪ ਹੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਹੀ ਲੈਸਨ ਤੋਂ ਬੜਾ ਗ੍ਰਾਸਪ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ. I think this is excellent. Let's keep going, and I think parents will also benefit and children will also benefit from this. Thank you, Melissa, and thank you, Stephen.
Yes, we appreciate the invitation.
Thank you, Anita Chopra, Dr. Anita Chopra, and thank you, Melissa Tucker, and thank you, Stephen. So we'll keep another session, and we will get in touch with you again. And we will finalize for the another session. Thank you for coming and for your time. Thank you again. Yeah.
Hello? Can you hear me? मेरी आवाज सुन